Good morning, y'all. Welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei, and I'm so excited to paint with you today. Today, we're going to jump into another day of our watercolor journals, and thank you for joining me on this journey. You've all been fantastic. If you're new here, we basically paint almost every day, not every single day. I do take breaks once in a while. In our watercolor journals, we experiment, we try all kinds of things. There is no theme here whatsoever. And today we're going to be painting succulents. So it is another gray winter day here. It's like I haven't seen the sun, I don't think, in like, I don't know, 2 weeks. So I am ready for some sunshine, and I'm going to paint some plants today to help me kind of imagine and envision something green and beautiful and bright. So we're going to paint some little succulents in flower pots or little pots. These are always fun, and this is going to be more of an illustrative style. I'm going to use a micron pen. I'm going to start out with my pencil. I have my Core Paints QOR by Golden. Check out the description for links to supplies and materials, and we're going to get started. All right, so don't ask me the name of any plants. Sometimes I remember them, sometimes I don't. And I'm really bad at keeping plants. I wouldn't say I'm bad at keeping them alive, but I am not great at it because I don't know anything. I love having them, but I'm not good at like knowing things about them. All right, we're going to start with kind of this bean shape. It's going to have a line down the center, and it's going to come out like this. And then we're going to add, and you'll see what kind of, it's like a little cactus of some kind. I'm going to have 2 lines come out from the sides like this. Now, it doesn't look, and actually this shouldn't be joined at the bottom. It doesn't look like a whole lot just yet, but you'll see once we get the rest down. So breaking things down into simple shapes, this is going to be the top of the pot that it goes in. And because this is just me in my watercolor journal, I'm going to put a little flower on top. I'm not always great about breaking down instruction because I haven't really thought about it. So sometimes it's just following along with what I'm doing, but I don't always explain everything super well. So I apologize for that. All right, so this is the top of the pot, so like the top section of it. We're going to draw 2 lines down. They're slightly angled in and a rounded bottom. So you can see there's a rounded bottom and a rounded top and a slightly rounded top here. And they should all kind of match each other. So that looks like a little succulent, right? When we add the paint and the shading, it'll look even better. This is one of those little cacti, and it's going to have little like spiky things on it. I'm going to put those in with a pen later. So that is our first one. Let's draw them all out first, and then we'll get to painting. I'm going to do a second one. I'm going to draw the pot first, actually. I'm going to do a little pot here. Same thing, slightly angled in, rounded bottom, rounded off top. And we're going to do another little cacti with like all the little round pieces that stack on top of each other. So we'll do like one over here, and then these are just circular oblong shape. You can't really do it wrong. I would say just try to make your composition interesting. I'm going to put 2 little ones on top here. There, that looks fun. And should we do one more? Okay. We'll do another little pot over here. Rounded, straight down, or slightly angled, rounded, slightly angled, rounded at the bottom. And we'll just do just doing these really like long shaped, pointed pieces. And then we have to layer this one. So there's got to be, I don't know how in love with this one I am, but that's okay. I'm going to change the angle of this. It's too straight up and down. All right, those look great. Let's start to paint some pots. I'm going to start with the pots, and you can make them any colors you want. This is a great time to play with so everything is going to be pretty green, different variations of green up top. So either you want to do something monochromatic and make the pots green as well, or something analogous where you're doing blues and greens and maybe some purples, or you can play with all kinds of different color variations. I'm going to do queracro magenta, but I am going to add some green to it to give it more of, so a little sap green to give it a more muted tone, like a brick color. And I'm going to give my pot a little form. So it's going to be darker on one side and darker under the lip. So I'm just going to start painting in this direction. Rinse my brush off, dab it off on my paper towel, and just blend it out. I have a lot of water on here. I don't need that much. So that way it's lighter on this one side than it is on the other. You can even leave some little white spots in it if you want to leave some highlights. Now I wasn't worried about getting rid of my pencil lines at all because I'm going to go over them in marker anyway, in my pen, my ink pen, for a little line drawing. And let's see, what other colors? Let's stay, I'm going to do, oh, I'm sorry. I have a little froggy in my throat. This is raw sienna. So this beautiful kind of natural tone yellow color. I'm going to do down here. And blend that out. And I see I'm getting a little bit of too much movement in my core paint. I'm getting these little starburst, kind of little arms reaching out. I'm just going to take my damp brush. There's no extra water on here. I'm just using the pressure of the brush to kind of thin those out. Make them a little smoother. All right, I'll do a combination of maybe this color and this color for my third pot, like an orangish, more orange. Sorry, I'm not picking up very much yellow. There we go. So more orangey. So nice earth tones. These are all like on the complementary side of green because red is a complement of green. They all have very warm red tones. So I think that'll look nice with the green. And I'm keeping, even though these are all little independent doodles, so their light sources could be anywhere you want them to be, but I'm keeping the light source all on one side and just doing the shading this way. I tend to do that when I doodle. The light source is always on the left. I don't know why. It's like being left-handed or right-handed, like you just gravitate towards, I don't know if that's true for other people, but it's true for me. I always gravitate towards putting a light, if I have to just make one up and put it in, it's always like from this angle versus this angle or below. Or I wonder if that would be opposite for left-handed folks, if it's just easier to paint from left to right like we read, but if you're left-handed, maybe it's easier the opposite way. All right, so while these are, I just put a little shadow like right under the lip. Probably should have changed the color for that one, but that's okay. This one's a little too wet. It's just going to bleed out. All right. Let's get into the succulents themselves. So these are fun. They don't have to be super complicated. I would say start with by finding one or two greens. And if you want them to be more of a cool green, go that way. If you want them to be more of a warm green, go that way. So I'm going to make a cool green. Sap green and phthalo blue, so that's a nice cool green. And I have like a warmer sap green over here that's more of a yellow. And I'm going to use both of these. I'm going to put down one layer first. So I'm going to start on this one. And I'm going to work wet into wet. So I'm going to put down some color. I want it to dry a little bit, like not be too wet. So when I put in my next color, it's not kind of going everywhere. Ba, ba, ba. And you can leave some little white spots for little highlights. Trying to keep it slightly lighter on this side because our pot already has that lightness over there. However, these are going to be stacked on top of each other, so they're interacting with each other. This one up here is going to cast a little shadow down there sometimes, so just keeping that in mind. All right, so with my other color, I'm going to just drop in. Ooh, that is a lot. And these are still very wet, but it can be fun. And here, there's definitely going to be darker there and there. Let's just see how that looks. I didn't have much of a rhyme or reason, and I didn't preserve any highlights. Just pulling out a little bit. But it just looks good. All right, for our little center cactus here, this has all of these sections that are like angled. So we do want to make sure if our light is coming from this way, we want to make sure like this one is lighter, but this one is darker because it's angled, almost like you're flipping the page of a book. It's slightly angled, so it's not getting any light on it. But this one will be a little lighter. And this one back here will be darker as well because it's hidden from the light. So just picturing that in your mind when you're starting to paint something like this, like where is the light and how could I suggest that light is hitting it and where would it be in shadow? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to paint this whole center section, this light value of green. And someone asked in the comments the other day, they were hearing the word value a lot more all of a sudden. So, and they were like, what is value? That's a great question. Value is the lightness or darkness of your color. So the more water we add in watercolor, the lighter the value. So this would be considered a pretty light to medium value, where this is a dark value of green. Okay. And I can show you after we get painting. All right, so now that that is a nice light value, I'm going to add another layer over here, wet on wet, because I want it to blend kind of nicely. We're going to make this side a darker value. We're going to let it spill over a little bit, casting a little bit of a shadow on this other side here. All right, and we're going to let that dry. I'm going to put this same, now you do have to be careful here because you don't want these to run into each other, but this same lighter value over here. You should probably let the center dry. I am trying to be very careful so they don't touch each other. So there's this tiniest little sliver of a gap between this one and this one. And then on the other side, here I have to make a little bit more darker green. This one is going to be almost the darkest because it's hidden from the light. It's tucked around the other side. And you do have to let things dry. You do have to reassess. So this one, it's bleeding in a little too much for me. I'm just going to pull some color out to keep that highlight. And I'm actually going to add some more color over here to make it even a little bit darker. All right, I'm gonna let that all dry and kind of come together. And then we can reassess to see if we need to put in any darker areas. This side, I'm gonna do a little bit darker. Just a little bit. There, okay, let it dry. Let's go paint these guys over here. These ones I'm just going to, let's bring in some more sap green, make this a warmer color. These I'm just going to play with. I'm going to put in some light colors and drop in some more color towards the base and the side and the angles, just to give their surface some interest and texture. Not going to be too precious about it. I am going to try to make sure they're, after it dries, like a first layer, I'm going to put some darker shadows where things overlap at the bases so it doesn't look like one big blob of green. That's the hardest part with something like this. We are going to add some ink, which will separate things, but to really get a true sense of separation, adding in shadow so it doesn't look completely flat. I'm going to paint it all in somewhat one color, and then I'm going to make some darker color at the base here. Could use a smaller brush for sure if you want to. And that looks super dramatic, but since it's wet on wet, it's going to move a little bit and it's going to dry even lighter. Not my finest work, but I'm feeling satisfied. And sometimes, I will say, and a journal is a great place to do it, sometimes you have to leave things at an uncomfortable stage, like you feel like it's too dramatic, and you're like, oh, I feel like it's too, the light, the separation between colors is too sharp, and it's not quite cohesive. Just leave it, let it dry, and then go back and re-examine it a little later. This one I'm just going to, we're getting some kind of lighter bleeds on the edge. I'm just going to come back in and make that side a little darker. There we go. All right, and these look great, but I'm going to add even some more, like one more layer. They're dry. I'm going to add in some darker color, and I am going to go back in with my damp brush and blend them out a little bit. Do, 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 do. So my brush is completely dry. It's just got a dampness to it from being dried off. And I'm just kind of moving around what paint is already on there. If I get too much paint, it's moving too far, I just wipe it off. So I'm wiping it off on my paper towel, kind of getting rid of any excess paint I've picked up. There we go. Perfect. All right, so now we're going to go in with our Micron pen after these dry. I am going to give them little shadows, so I'm going to take a little Payne's Gray up here. So right at the base of where the pot meets what would be the ground, I'm just going to put a little shadow at the bottom. Blend it out, blend it out, blend it out to almost nothing. But it's coming, light again is coming from this angle. So if you put your shadow in the opposite direction, your brain is going to be like, it's going to look at it and be like, oh, that's a shadow. But I feel like there's just something wrong with it because it's like defying the laws of light. All right, there we go. So we have our 3 little succulent plants. Let them dry, and then we'll just come back and put our Micron pen on. You can leave them like this and just see the pencil lines through, or it's up to you. Oh, we got to put a little flower on top. We'll just do that in magenta. Oh, I probably could have done it in this red color of the pot. There we go. All right. Back in 2 seconds. Right, we're back. I have my Micron pen. This is a size 5 Micron pen. These are archival permanent ink. They're great little, you can usually get them in a pack of like 5 different sizes. I think it's 5 or 7 for, you know, under $20 for sure. It's like $10, $12. You can add as much line detail as you want. I'm just going to go around and kind of sketch in some edges. I'm not going to do like harsh outlines, but I am going to add like little squiggles, I guess. Just little squiggles for like the little points of the cactus, the little needles that kind of live around the edges. But I am going to put them on the interior as well as the exterior. I'm trying not to overthink it. Try not to put too many, but just give that surface a little texture. Here, I'll scooch this one over so you can see a little better. And Micron pens I really like, especially on like this textured paper when you're kind of sketching. They don't leave a super harsh line. Like you can be more gentle with it and it will leave a much lighter kind of line, or will skip little bits. Or you can press harder to get a thicker line, even though, you know, and you have different sizes. But if some other pens or markers have like, they're just much harder to control the amount of ink. Like a hard line is going to come out no matter what. So this one I kind of just outlined, but I'm going to go and I'm going to put little things on the edges. Oh, actually, that's inside. That probably shouldn't. You can outline your pots or just outline certain parts of them. You can see I'm going back and forth. I'm using light pressure and then heavier pressure when I want it to be darker. But because it is on textured paper, it's going to skip around a bit. It's not going to be a harsh line. You can add pen shading on top of your watercolor shading if you want. Add texture. give some life to my flower. And last but not least, this little guy over here, you can add, I'm adding some like upward texture right in it with the pen, inside the leaves as well as the edges. Again, this is very illustrative. It's not realistic. It's taking elements of realism, concepts about light and shadow and form, but it's illustrative. It's representational. And this is not for everyone. Some people hate line and wash or hate the way I do it. That is totally fine. You do not have to do that. You can just leave it watercolor. Just skip this step. All right, I think we're done. There are cute little succulents. Oh, bring a little light to my life in this very dreary, vitamin D deficient, cloudy period of the winter. All right, well, thank you so much for following along for another watercolor journal idea. I'm Shayna Cersei. Don't forget to check out the description, like and follow, leave a comment, share with a friend, and I will catch you for our next watercolor journal idea tomorrow.